grab out your safety goggles and put on your lab coat because today we are doing some crochet science. And by that I mean we're going to get a bunch of tie-dye and some bleach and chuck it on various different yarns to see what happens. This is an idea I've had in mind for quite some time now, but before I go ahead and potentially ruin an entire project, I want to do some testing. In order to do that, I've grabbed out 6 different kind of yarns. I've got the Spot Saver here, which is a thicker weight acrylic. I've got the 4 Seasons Marvel 8-ply, which is sort of kind of my basic go-to. I have the Stallion 8-ply acrylic, and if you're anything like me when you first started crocheting and you had access to a Spotlight store, this was the stuff you started out with, so I want to test it on that too. But I also have some different fiber types. I have pure wool, 100% Australian wool. I have the 4 Seasons Brighton yarn, which is a blend of 50% cotton and 50% acrylic. And to round out the lineup, I have the 4 Seasons Flinders, which is a 100% cotton yarn. Before we actually start our crochet science experiment, I will need to crochet myself some squares in each of these yarns. I will be doing that in the black as well as the white. And then we get to go to town with the tie-dye and the bleach, which I am very much looking forward to. I've always wanted to tie-dye something, I just never got around to it. Maybe I can tie-dye myself a t-shirt while I'm at it. All right, enough playing with the ancient welding goggles. I have squares to make. I've done it. I've crocheted myself all the squares I'm going to need for my little experiment here. And I have the tie-dye and I don't have the bleach yet. I've just got the empty bottles. I will have one bottle that contains straight bleach. In the second bottle, I'm going to have 1 part bleach and 1 part water. And then in the third, I'm going to have 1 part bleach and 3 parts water. I just like to see what, if any, effect watering down the bleach has on the yarn. So we're going to attempt that. I was fully prepared to try this today, but unfortunately the weather has decided to spite me. It's been raining here all morning. And if that continues, I'm not going to be able to do this because I think dyeing and bleaching yarn is very much an outdoors project. I don't think I want to be doing it in here, so I will need to be outside for this, and that's not really an option at this point. Which is really disappointing. I was looking forward to playing around with tie-dye and bleach, but never mind. I can't control the weather yet. So things are a little bit up in the air at this point. I may be able to get this done later today, but if not, I'll just have to find another day where I can take all these outside and begin the experiment. I really would like to do it today though. Please clear up weather.
Several days later.
Alrighty, we're all set up, good to go. I've got my controls over here. Then we're going to have the tie-dye, the pure bleach here, the 1 part bleach, 1 part water is this column, and then the 1 part bleach, 3 parts water is on the end here. Not loving the tie-dye so far. The colours are kind of dull. I was expecting something nice and vibrant, but that's not the case. But I'm going to leave it. You're supposed to wrap up the tie-dye and let it set for several hours. So I will do that later. But for now, I'm going to go onto the bleach. I got the straight bleach. On one side, I'm going to add the spray, but then I've got some paint brushes because on the opposite side, I'm just going to paint it on and see what sort of difference that produces. Well, okay, the cotton, I don't know how well you can see that on these cameras, but I think that's the cotton, isn't it? No, I don't want to touch the label and spread stuff to my controls, but that is really turning orange. That is cool. The rest, oh, there's a tiny bit on this one, which I think is the blend, but yeah, that as, whew, didn't expect it to turn that orange that quickly. All done. Now I'm just going to let this dry for a little while, though the last step I will have to do is wrap each of these individually in Glad Wrap, and then I'm going to let everything sit here for a few hours and I'll come back, take a look, but after that I'm going to give each of these a wash, and I'll wash it as per the care instructions on the label, and after those dry I'll bring you guys back and we can have a bit of a squiz at the results. At the moment, the cotton seems fairly promising. I'm liking what I'm seeing here. The acrylic nonsense down here, nothing so far, nothing. I'm disappointed in you, acrylic. Well, that's not going to work now, is it? Sorry, you lot, but you're going to have to go somewhere else. No, you come back. There we go. You can prop that up. Perfect. Not perfect. I lost one. Well, here we go. The results. They were both enlightening and kind of underwhelming at the same time. I know this isn't the prettiest thing to look at, but it was the largest piece of cardboard that I had, so I tried to make it work. Anyway, over here on the left-hand side, the far left-hand side, we've got the yarn labels. So I know what all of these rows are. And then in the columns, we've got what I did to each square. So we've got our controls here, our tie-dye, our bleach, our 1-to-1 bleach and water, and then our 1-to-3 bleach and water. Let's start with the tie-dye. I'm going to touch on this briefly, but then I have a bit of a rant for the end. So I'll save that till later. But yeah, here is the tie-dye. As you can see, very, very unimpressive. It didn't take to any of the yarns, but I'm going to leave that there for now and I'll circle back to it later. Moving on to the bleach. It worked really well for the cotton and cotton blends. It had barely any effect on the rest of the yarns, which is the wool and the acrylic. I kind of expected it not to work on the wool because I think from memory, I don't think animal fibers bleach very well, and with the acrylic I didn't really have any expectations because I wasn't sure how the bleach would interact with the acrylic, but going by what's happened here, I don't think there was much interaction at all. If anything, I think the bleach actually damaged all of these, so the wool and the acrylics. The wool, to a greater extent, it's gone quite fuzzy, like the threads have been split, and it is more pronounced in the bleach one than it is in the 1-to-1 bleach and then in the 1-to-3 bleach. So my conclusion from that is watering the bleach down makes the damage less significant. And the same thing kind of happened with the acrylics as well, just to a lesser extent. The point of doing this was to determine what kind of fiber type that I would like to use in a project that I would then later bleach. And looking at my results here, I think cotton is the clear winner. The cotton and acrylic blend didn't do too badly, you can see here. And to be honest, I kind of like the effect that this had. The 100% cotton, so the top here, that just went orange, and obviously the straight bleach had a more pronounced effect. That has gone the palest orange, and then we go slightly darker as we add in more water. But the cotton and acrylic blend has got this white grey undertone to it, which I really like. If you perhaps played around with that, made your project from both 100% cotton and the cotton blend, I reckon you could get some really funky designs going on there. So I'll have to have a think about that one and how I would construct such a project. And another way I could approach a project using bleach was to combine the bleach and the watered down bleach. So I thought you could sort of layer it on top of each other. So you use the lighter, the full bleach for certain sections, but then the watered down bleach to make darker areas of the project. And you might be able to do, I don't know if you could do like an ombre project, or perhaps a design where you had the foreground lighter, but then you did the background section darker. I don't know, I'll have to put a lot more thought into it than that, but I am kind of impressed with how these worked out, and I'm really looking forward to being able to use them in a project, however that happens to work and come together. There's not much more to say about the wool and the acrylics, because as I mentioned, all I think the bleach did in lesser concentrations was damage them slightly. And yeah, I don't really have much more to say than that. I'm not going to be making a project out of these if A, it's not going to work, and B, it's just going to get damaged if I attempt it. So they can be excluded from the pool of possible yarns that I'm going to use. And that sums up all the black yarns for which I used bleach. But now we can go on to the tie-dye. I was honestly incredibly disappointed with the results here. I've wanted to try tie-dye for literal years. It's just one of those things, I never got around to it. I've always had in the back of my mind, like, yeah, I want to try that. Just never happened. And I thought this would be such a good opportunity. Not only could I combine something I love in crochet, but in something that I've wanted to do forever in tie-dye. And the culmination of that was this. So I was super disappointed, but here's the thing. I actually had two different tie-dye sets. I had one that I purchased and one that I've had sitting on my shelf for ages, which my sister gave me, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. One of them did. But I used in here the one that I purchased. And I purchased that from a store called Lincraft, sort of expecting the dyes to be, roughly equivalent. Obviously, I've never used tie-dye before, so I wasn't sure what kind of discrepancies there are between different brands of tie-dye. But yeah, my assumption was they'd be roughly the same. And then I tried the Lincraft one, and this is what I got. To begin with, the powder would not dissolve. My sister and I alternated between shaking the powder like you're supposed to it had to be at least 20 minutes. Still didn't dissolve. We let it sit in the water for an additional, it must have been an hour or so. The powder still wouldn't dissolve. At that point, I was like, I need to get this done, so I'll try it on the yarn anyway, which I did. I was expecting nice, vibrant colors, and I got a light stain at best. So very underwhelming, very disappointing, but I sort of persevered anyway. And then I let them sit overnight as the instructions said to do, and I washed all of these squares out as per the care instructions on the label. And this is what I ended up with. And what I actually had planned to do is, after using up some dye on these, was to tie-dye myself some t-shirts, because again, just something I wanted to do. But having now used the dye, I was very much turned off from trying it on a t-shirt. I just didn't think it was going to work. So I packed up for the day, put everything away, and tried to forget the disappointment. However, I wasn't able to forget that easily. So a few days later, I was like, you know what? Bugger it. I'm going to get out the other dye I have and just try it, see if that's any better. And you know what? It bloody was. Check out my t-shirt. I may have gone a little bit nuts. I made myself a couple of t-shirts. I made my nieces and nephews their own t-shirts, and they all worked brilliantly, if I do say so myself. And having had a much better experience with the second lot of dyes, I went back, crocheted myself 3 additional squares, and I dyed those with this new brand. And here are those. So this is the cotton one. This is the wool. And then here is the acrylic. Significant improvement. Even the worst of the bunch, which is the acrylic, was leaps and bounds better than anything I got with this dye. So that had me feeling a lot more optimistic about this future project that I want to make. You can see that all of the yarns did take up the dye to a degree. Cotton is by far the winner, and that goes for the bleach as well. So guess what I'm going to be making this future project out of. But even the wool did an admirable job. And while the colors on the wool, they are a lot more desaturated as compared to the cotton, which is nice and vibrant, I don't mind that look. I think that could work for certain kinds of projects. Definitely doesn't stand out as much as the cotton, but yeah, it's not bad. And then down to the acrylic, which is again the worst of the bunch. But again, that really almost pastel faded look is something I think you could make work in the right circumstances. But for me, my circumstances are definitely going to be crochet a couple of projects out of cotton yarn and then doing something with them, something tie-dye and bleach related, to be determined. So yeah, that sums up my crochet experiment. What was this? This was acrylic, wasn't it? There are honestly so many more roads I could go down with this. I could use different fiber types. Honestly, the best one was by far the cotton at the top here. So extrapolating from that, I could use other sort of natural plant fibers and see which one of those dyes best. I could use different kinds of dyes, fabric dyes, natural dyes. There's just a lot that I could do from here, I think, which I might do at some point in the future. But for now, at least, I know that if I crochet myself a couple of tops, because they're probably going to be tops, out of this cotton yarn, if I want to either bleach them or tie-dye them, I'm going to get some decent results, I think. So we all have that to look forward to in a future video. If any of you more experienced like yarn dyers out there have any tips or tricks that you would like to impart upon me and anybody else who's watching, please put those down in the comments because I'd be really interested to learn. For now, I am happy to proceed with what I've learned here. But before I start that, and before we finish this video entirely, we do have to do... And today's featured creator on the hookup is Rikke's Creative Space, and she says, I'm 28 and from Denmark, and I love to crochet, make bullet journals, and make my own gift tags / cards. You know how I said tie-dye was on the list of things I always wanted to try? So was bullet journals. I don't know what I'd do with a journal. I'm not really a journaling kind of person, but they always looked cool to make. But again, that's one of those things. I just got to get around to it one day. If you'd like to check out all of Rikke's Creative Space's links, they will be down in the description. And so will a link to a Google form if you would like to apply for the hookup for yourself. And that is almost all I have for you guys today. I just wanted to finish up by showing you the tie-dyes I used in case you want to either purchase or avoid these tie-dyes for yourself. So the tie-dye that I used initially, the one that was absolute rubbish, was this set here. And again, I got that from Linkcraft. I don't know if I got a bad batch, but if this is representative of all of their dyes, I would steer clear of this. It was truly terrible. One of the worst products I've bought in ages, and I'm not just talking like craft crochet products. I mean, overall, it was that bad. The one that I used for my t-shirts and for the second attempt at tie-dyeing the yarn was the Tulip brand, which is, I've actually got the Tulip brand inside the Linkcraft brand box. And that was the Tulip brand dye, which I got from Spotlight, but I believe you can get it from many places online. And that worked really well so far. It stood up to a couple of washes. I can't say with any certainty how good it is in the long run, how many washes it lasts for, but I'm going to wear this for a while and see. I can always update you guys in the future, but so far, so good. So yeah, if you're looking for tie-dye, avoid this one. Tulip one gets a thumbs up from me. Tie-dye review over. Thank you all very much for watching. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Share it if you think it's worth sharing. And I will see you in the next one.